was a gun.
I'm not voting.
If we want to build our nation.
The problem with the Somalians.
Just want to experience something else than a black man.
Move on, move
Can't be
forward.
like a horse with blinkers on.
Honestly say, I was about to have
Corrupt
sex and then I pulled
crap,
up.
but it's nice.
My name is Nelly and I'm from Cape Town and I'm a teacher.
And my name is Kyla Falanda. I was born in Joburg, but I'm Cape Town based and I'm an actress and filmmaker.
My name is Amani. I'm from Joburg, but I'm currently living in South Africa.
My name's Clarine Littich. I'm originally from the Eastern Cape, but I've been living in Cape Town for a number of years.
I'm Miles Collins. I'm from Cape Town. I'm currently studying at Rhodes University.
In our country, we have a lot of issues. In our society, we have a lot of issues. And Armani brings it up. It's identity politics, effectively. I think we've had some progress in terms of race, at least. We're not where we need to be yet, but at least we acknowledge that there are issues. I seriously think we need a revolution in terms of sex, gender, sexual identity, and all these things. We need to question things, and we have a long way to go with this.
Struggles, just gender roles at home, where just certain chores are specifically for females, and no matter how much work you have, and no matter how many other activities you have to sort of see to, you've still got to do the dishes, you've still got to make sure your younger brother's shirts are all ironed for school, and in my case I've actually had to also walk the younger siblings to their bus stop, and forgetting that it's actually not safe for me to be walking people at 6 a.m. but because it's not your brother's job, it's your job.
You know, we need to address our patriarchal system, you know, as has been said, but I think a main problem for us in that process is the fact that very often the way that, you know, the case for dismantling it is presented is a way that makes a lot of men who've had no other exposure feel that they're being attacked.
There were so many structures in the past about how to be a man or be a woman, maybe from the oppressive system, that now we enter the new generation now where things are so fluid that people still have a need to categorize.
It's like in the primitive days of our culture where the understanding was that you needed to educate males more because they would then become the breadwinners of all the families, where females had to just be imported from one family to another and they didn't need to have any sort of real economically viable skills that they could use to then bring up a household, where it's completely failed. I mean, across cultures and across history, we have not had a time in our space where we didn't need women to be breadwinners or to be resourceful in those relationships.
Being taught that you have to man up, being taught that you have to be stronger, be harder, don't cry, stand up, that's very damaging to men. So it's not that easy for guys to just, you know, snap into it. I think once there is, once that understanding and communication is reached, you know, that lets men know properly that, you know, you're also being hurt by this. I see how you're being hurt by this. If you help liberate women and stop oppressing them, it'll stop hurting you too.
It comes down to a number of things, and I was speaking about it earlier. I think it's so intersectional now, with so many different things that if you are heterosexual, that could be many different things. If you are a woman, that could be many different things, because I think gender is also very collaborative with sexuality, in fact, and sexual tendencies too. But it's very hard for me to say. I don't know.
You can't navigate gender while still not like occupying a sexual space or whatever.
Okay,
I think
true.
the ideal living scenario for me would be able to, if people were to be able to operate within like gender fluid society, where it's actually not that it's not important to differentiate, but where it's okay to be whatever you choose to be, you know.
And so many people, I think, are restricted by gender prescriptions. Like, I know someone who's an excellent farmer, for an example, but she's female, and she's never going to inherit the farm. Her brother's going to inherit the farm. Stuff like that. It's
as a transgender person, you get a lot of, within the trans community, there's also so much variety and so much definition, because I mean, you get trans people who choose to go through a physical process of hormones and surgery, some who only go through hormone treatment, some who go through it for a while just to change a little bit, maybe to masculinize and then stop, and some who never choose to transition but also still fully identify as transgender. So it's incredibly interesting to see. And then you also have the thing of like whether you will identify, you know, when people start reading you, for example, as male, whether you will identify as a man or whether you identify as a trans man. Is being transgender a part of your identity, or is it part of your experience?
So it's important to distinguish between sex and gender. Like sex being a biological shape, but gender is complicated. I don't tend to see people as either male or female. It's more complex than that for me. I think it's a social construct, and I think for some of us it's more important. I think especially when you encounter, I don't know, difficulties. When people discriminate against you based on it. It's like when people say, well, you know, race shouldn't matter anymore, you should just ignore it. But when your day-to-day is affected by that, you can't pretend it doesn't exist.
And that's like a very privileged kind of mindset to have, where it's like, you know, it's irrelevant. Like, I don't see race, I don't see gender, but like when it's such a significant part of your existence, like, you know, just, you know, taking public transport or whatever and having to deal with like street harassment. I'd love to be able to exist in a world where it's irrelevant that I'm a woman, but like that plays a significant part when I'm walking down the street by myself and, you know, I get catcalled or like intimidated or followed or whatever. You know, that's definitely my gender plays a part in that. So I just wanted to ask you, Miles, what do you identify as?
I identify as a guy, just a like pretty much straightforward straight guy. But at the same time, like as much as I identify as a guy, the thing is that I don't like I experience being transgender as a part, you know, a very intrinsic part of me, just because of the fact that as much as pre-transition I used to reject my perceived female identity, because my female identity only really existed in the minds of other people, but it's still very real for that reason. I used to reject it very much, but I think that it's a very useful thing to, you know, consider part of me now.
So you believe that from the transition of a woman to being a man, that there is male privilege, definitely. Yeah. But you as a black woman, like in the hierarchical ladder, would be probably the most inferior.
Or the most oppressed.
Most oppressed.
Inferior.
Not inferior.
Marginalized.
Or marginalized.
True. It's quite a complicated conversation to have, because when a question like what makes you female, what makes you a man, then you've got to start thinking about all the layers of oppression that you go through, and some of which you don't personally experience but sort of happen around you on a day-to-day basis. And in that case, I sort of agree with what Miles was saying about the physicality of being socialized to sort of from a very early age, where you haven't even assumed a sexuality yet. You already start behaving in a certain way because you're built up in a setting, in a space that gives you certain privileges if you're a male and not so much if you're a female. So it's how you experience it, and it's all those layers of oppression and having to sort of define them and sort of work with the ones that you feel you can sort of contest.
The decided norm of beauty was one of my biggest struggles, because obviously I didn't have straight hair and I wasn't perceived to be beautiful in my own eyes because of what I was like influenced by, which is like the white ideal.
I think one of my struggles has been with people confusing my sexuality. Particularly because I had long dreads, they were here, you know what I'm saying? And I confused with, I was not man enough, let's say that. So I think, because I think as much as, you know, there's a whole patriarchal society, the patriarchal society is also subjective towards the men as well. And we are also affected by it, whereby the masculinity that we go through is heavily affected by who we sexually affiliated with. So if you're seen to be a heterosexual, you're definitely seen to be more manly. If you're seen to be a homosexual, you're definitely seen to be more feminine.
Do you ever find yourself in a scenario where like some dude will come up to you and say some really misogynistic things about another woman, assuming because you're a man that you automatically agree with?
No, I correct it.
Yeah, do you?
Sometimes I correct it, and honestly, sometimes I don't. When I'm drunk.
What do you agree?
In some ways, I'm very privileged, but at the same time, I identify as queer. I've been in love with women and I've been in love with men. And I've had the strangest reactions from lesbians going, no, but nuh-uh. Bisexuality, it doesn't exist. Queerness doesn't exist. You're a traitor to the cause. You just want to steal our girlfriends from us. Or from a heterosexual perspective, there's the thing of, Oh no, but you're one of those girls who just kisses other girls to turn the boys on.
To get attention.
Right? Or they tell you, no, it's a phase.
Yeah.
It's also very interesting, especially in the Cape Town space. Like, you see women of different cultures, of different races being socialized differently. Like, for example, I wouldn't be able to walk past a construction site with like 10 black men just trying to do their work. They would literally all stop and say things.
Yeah.
Whereas if a woman of a different color, sort of perceived to be more respectable than me, then they suddenly keep quiet.
Because they're getting shit for it.
You know,
well, they think they do this. We 100% live in a sexist society.
100%.
Sexist, heteronormative,
Racist.
patriarchal, racist.
But I think it's getting better. I think there is progress. I mean, we're
But
talking
you
as open
but you
people.
also navigate in like very liberal spaces. Like, look at
Okay,
this conversation that's going down right now.
So it's a
Like,
classist thing.
It is a classist thing, 100%.
What's nice to see though is that I'm not sure if it's kind of a historical change, but there's a lot of evidence suggesting that people don't have to sort of start with the prerequisites anymore. You get a lot of homosexual teenagers who have never had to actually be with a girl.
To know that they're gay.
This is, it's
I've known a couple of couples identify totally as like cisgender, straight couples, like everything, except that the woman is incredibly powerful and like dominant and everything, and the guy is like much more sensitive and much more submissive, you know.
So we are always kind of constantly evolving, and so we cannot even ourselves allow ourselves to be identified by one element. There's a lot of it that we sort of pick up along the way, and just as long as it's an open conversation and a free space to.
I think that in terms of gender relations, like one of the key solutions is peer culture and about creating good examples for people around you to follow, not necessarily younger people, it could be older people. I think men play a very important role in dismantling the patriarchal structure. Just in terms of creating safe spaces for one another, for the communication and the exchange to become different, you know, for the goals and the aspirations to shift and to dismantle what we existing in currently. And I just think like moving towards like a body positive, sex positive society is like a really cool thing, and I think it's possible if we just, you know, if we just become people that we wanted to see when we were younger, you know?
My dream would be to address the education system so that it's more inclusive of all kinds of genders, and in terms of, you know, early on racial education, awareness of privilege, checking that privilege.
My dream is to live in a world full of freedom and respect and equality, where people don't feel or aren't told that they need to be or do something because of their gender, their race, their class, their cultural background, nothing. Absolute freedom.
My dream is to see absolute freedom, but also absolute justice for everyone that needs it, women and men in particular. And also to tell men that it's okay to be feminine, it's okay to feel, particularly in this society.
My dream is to be able to dismantle structures by whatever output I have. So I want to influence media and storytelling and begin to tell my story and, you know, make that story okay for people like me, people who are younger than me, just, you know, be a better example.
My dream is to have enough influence as well in terms of education and the way we plan curriculum in order to educate about social issues and get more people to be more emotionally capable of building better communities.
You should ever sit and talk with people, or else take a walk and create a straight talk. Talk what is nice, it will make you feel stronger. Listen what is right and say what is wrong. You should ever sit and talk with people, or else take a walk and create a straight talk. Talk what is nice, it will make you feel stronger. Listen what is right and say what is wrong.